documenting the front lines of the AI revolution, the AI Rebels podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the AI Rebels podcast. I am your co-host, Spencer.
And I'm your other co-host, Jacob, and we're here with Jason Pikoos, who is a managing director at Connor Group in the, I want to make sure I get it right, the technical, hold on, Jason. What is the full name of the department you are championing at Connor Group?
So I'm a managing partner, and I guess I'm overall responsible for our digital solutions and technology offerings. I focus a lot on technology and innovation. It's probably the best description of who I am.
Okay, that's what I was trying to. I couldn't think of the word innovation, technology and innovation. We're very excited to have you on, Jason. Thanks for coming.
I'm happy to be here. I'm excited to chat about a topic that I feel like my life over the last 2 years talking about.
Same. It's hard to. It just pulls you in. Yeah, it really does.
Yeah.
Jason, tell us a little bit about you, what you're working on. What are you hoping to accomplish? What's taking your time right now?
Jeepers, good question. So I've been in the accounting field for, maybe I'm going to age myself here, coming on 24, 25 years. And I actually love accounting, which is kind of maybe that's sad or nerdy. I want to be a teen. But I also have a real passion for actually transformation and technology. And it's in that order because of the fact that I'm super excited about operational improvement, accelerating things, getting things done better. And technology is just such a powerful enabler. My excitement in it, I was actually talking to somebody yesterday, and I really agree with it. It feels like we are, and it may feel like that again in 10 years' time, but it feels like we're about to come on that cusp of a technological revolution when it comes into process and what we can do with technology. And I'm super excited, frankly, to just be part of that journey. It's very exciting what's going on. I've got another 5 years ahead, which is going to be, we're going to see so much change.
Yeah.
And a big part of what I'm hoping to do and achieve is, one, to be a big part of that journey. My hope is also, frankly, to be able to influence the direction where we go, especially in the finance and accounting space, and then to bring some of this technology and exciting stuff to some of the highest growth companies on the planet. That's my goal. Let's see if I can not mess it up.
It's ambitious, especially we were talking a little bit before, I know how maybe risk averse, maybe slower to adopt change accountants typically are. What are some of the big hurdles that you're seeing as you're working with clients in the AI adoption?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. We did a survey recently, and the survey said some stuff which I partially agree with and partially disagree with. I think they highlighted kind of the people side of it and the training and the capabilities, and I think there's some truth to that. I don't necessarily I don't think it necessarily is reference to the fact that people don't know how to use the tools. I think the education is what to do with the tools. And what fields are true and what fields are not, right? A lot of the chatbots, many of these AI tools are actually very simple to use. And technology is becoming kind of that no-code, low-code is a real thing. But I think people are either weary of it, and therefore there's a lack of education about what's real and what isn't in terms of risk. And also, I kind of use this quote every now and again. You get technology, AI is one of these examples, technology that has so many uses that it is almost useless. And what I mean by that is when you give somebody a platform and you tell them it can do everything for you, you figure it out. They stare at the screen, don't know what to do with it, and guess what they do? They don't use it at all. So thus it's useless. So I have a tool that's exceedingly powerful, but ultimately becomes useless because of the fact that nobody uses it. And I think those are some of the kind of the issues there. I think the other thing is practical use cases. I think still people are searching for those. And I think there are some good use cases out there that work and resonate really well for certain companies, and therefore they have jumped on those. But for many other ones, it feels like, well, that would be nice, but it's an incremental improvement. That would be nice, but it's an incremental improvement. And therefore I have other things to deal with that frankly will give me more value than jump on this AI. So I think those are some of the things that are really kind of hampering or slowing things down for people kind of really running away with this technology.
Yeah. That's really interesting. The idea of its usefulness is almost overwhelming.
Yeah, it is. Exactly the word.
And it does require a mindset shift, which I know Spencer and I have seen a lot of, where That's every single guest we have on. We ask them, like, what advice would you give people that are nervous about AI, want to learn how to use AI, whatever it is? And almost every single person says, use it. Like, just try to use it in some way, apply it, because it's so abstract and it's hard to understand the impact it can have until you're sitting there doing it.
I also think that there's
hard.
a lot of people too who, they tried out Chat GPT 3.5 or like the very first version of GPT-4, and that's still their baseline for what these chatbots can do. And we're well beyond those days now. I still see with art generation, with the fusion models, I still see people claiming that AI can't do hands, and it's like, that was like 3 years ago, man. We're on to entirely different problems in AI now. Now it's like, look, like when we animate this coffee mug, like the coffee doesn't look quite right.
It is. Yeah, it's amazing, the evolution and the speed. And I think you're right. I think people are so used to only that chat interface. I think people are going to have to start reorienting themselves, because many of the AIs will be embedded in the product. You won't even realize per se that you're using AI. ChatGPT is very obvious AI. It's what it is.
Right.
But when embedded in either software or, obviously we can chat more about the concept of agentic flows if you want. That's one where it's a little bit more invisible to the user, but it's using those very foundational capabilities. The biggest problem is, and this is very true for accountants. So Spencer, you probably don't have this much of a challenge being in a slightly different background, but and it's true for accountants and other people in functional departments. We look at technology for what it is used for. So we buy an ERP because this is what it does. As opposed to looking at it as what it can do. In other words, it's a capability versus a use question. And it's very difficult to train your mind to think about capabilities, the many, many different ways it can be used, and then how can I apply it? That is a mindset that typically sits more in the engineering, development, and IT side of the world, because they want tools that they can have multi-purpose. And then when they get a request, they can, I'm going to customize it in many different ways. But you flip to the functional side of the house, and it's very true for finance and accounting. I want a tool that processes accounts payable. I want a tool that recognizes revenue.
Yeah.
And therefore, I want an AI that does an X. And therefore, both it's struggle when I get a tool that's multi-purpose, but I also struggle to think beyond what they're used to seeing. And therefore, unfortunately, we miss a lot of the art of the possible.
Yeah. And I also think the nature of accounting and finance is so habitual and cyclical, right? Like the month end, sorry, there's a bug flying around here. It's so like that month end close process. You have your checklist, you have the things you do every single month and every year. And so it turns into this checklist, I think, lending to what you're saying, where you're saying, in your mind as an accountant, you're like, okay, I need a tool to help me check this box.
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah.
And then you get in your world. That's tricky.
Well,
so Jason,
also learn to accept it. I mean, we've accepted. Somebody said to me, the accepted pain, I think was the word that they use. We've assumed that this is just the way you do it because we've always done it. And the person before me handed it off to me.
Yep.
And therefore, there is no technology solution for my month-end accruals or my reconciliations.
Yeah.
And therefore, when somebody asks you, what do you want to automate? They tell me, you're right, the checklist, as opposed to the task, because I can't even begin to imagine that it can be automated.
I just saw this clip of Steve Jobs talking about kind of a similar concept where he says, corporate America is so much is done in corporate America because that's how it was done last year.
Yes.
And it keeps rolling forward. And until we can shift some key players' mindsets, it's going to keep rolling along just like that. So,
so we look at automation in a very narrow band.
Yeah.
That's the world we work in. So then my band of automation, and it's just we need to what is it? I think using Apple, like kind of concept of first principles. Go back to the beginning of what you're trying to achieve and put everything aside. But that's super difficult for accountants.
Yeah, very difficult.
Sorry, what were you going to ask?
I was curious if let's say we have some accountants and finance people watching this who are in this struggle. How do I use AI? What would you tell them right now with not a forecast, not like, hey, this is coming down the line, but more, here's what's possible right now. What are some key things you would tell these people to apply AI to or tools to use?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great one. If any document-heavy process is a great opportunity for it. That it's something that's been around for a while, and I'm not just talking about, hey, use ChatGPT, load a contract, ask it to give you something. I mean, that's certainly a good use case, but there are tools that do a lot of this in a much more systematic kind of enterprise-grade level. So if you have any area where you're looking at lots of documents, and lots doesn't have to be 300 in a month. Lots could be 10 complex. So those could be documents, or you're dealing with invoices, and it could be processing those invoices or just reviewing those invoices.
Mm-hmm.
Could it be, we have sometimes where we have partnerships where you may be partnering with a big retailer, and they send you all these small invoices and transactions and data points. Anything where there's a heavy amount of document engagement, phenomenal area to be engaging on AI. It can do so much for you, from data extraction to summarization to organization to comparisons. Phenomenal use case. Other areas of use cases which are really powerful are research-oriented ones. It's actually a very similar form of technology where it's ultimately looking at a lot of documents, but when you're doing document, that the transactional side, which I described, you typically are extracting data, but research could be a very powerful way to sift through huge amounts of documents. So technical accounting is one where we will see that evolving very rapidly. We've actually been working with a partner firm of ours which helps with SEC research and technical accounting, and it's phenomenal. Actually, Connor Group uses the tool now, and our teams are using it because it's so much quicker than sifting through many, many guides and trying to find the information. And it's a different form. When you do that, we're used to research being, hey, find me the following. And then I'm going to find the following, and then I'll do the work. Now you can say, I have this exact situation. What should I do? And find me references. And that's a different question from find me the following, which is a very basic, to this is the fact pattern. Not only find it, but tell me from when you read these things, what should it look like? And that's a very big evolution. The other areas are going to be analytical based. That is more of an emerging area. I think there are some tools and there are some capabilities embedded in products, but the analytics, when I talk about analytics, I'm talking about data analytics. There's a lot of machine learning capabilities that already exist. And I actually think if you're doing a lot of manual data analytics, just silly nowadays. The technology has existed for ages to automate most reporting and analytics. Machine learning models are exceedingly underutilized in finance and accounting, old school AI. But where we're going with this is a world of AI, generative AI, sitting on top of database or databases. And there are some tools that exist out there where you can actually, it sits on top of your data and you just ask questions. And imagine a world, most CFOs or VPs of finance or even accountants, when they want information from their financial systems, it's quite a painful exercise. You run a report. Hopefully it's a nice one that formats into Excel. You're doing whatever you need to do. It's maybe multiple reports. We are going to move to a world, and we already are seeing first iterations of it. Just ask, and then ask the next question and ask the next. You want to start high level, and then you want to go all the way down right to the line item on a transaction. Just ask. And then you want to go from customers to vendors. And then when did we pay them? And when did we last receive something from them? And how much do we owe them? And what was the total expense? That's the world we're getting. This is not far away. These are realities today, and it's just going to get better and better. So to me, I think I'd start with the document stuff because that's there. The research stuff is really there. Moving into some of that data analytics, I think is an area that's going to be really exciting. Data is obviously a bit of a problem in that area.
I've been really impressed with the, just a quick plug, I guess, for the OpenAI deep research feature. I need to try out more of their competitors, admittedly. So I can't speak to the competitiveness of it compared to others. But to your point, it's incredible the work I've been able to get it to do. And I've only found minor errors in the reports that it's compiled for me. And it's usually down to it couldn't actually access a PDF that it found. And so it hallucinated some data from it. But when those problems are solved, it's going to be, front to end, you can run full research projects with it. It's incredible.
Now have that, imagine that sitting on top a RAG database, a database of stored and organized content that you wanted to reference. And now you not only you can do research on an enormous database, but you can control it to the database that you wanted to reference. And that's what the product that I was mentioning effectively does. It's using these tools. So you take this powerful capability of what is, in all honesty, a bit of a limited interface with ChatGPT. You can do that. Now you add that into a software product that actually creates the user experience and takes you through the flow. with whether it's a RAG database or whatever it is. And man, it is just such a phenomenal user experience. I'm super excited, and there's so many more use cases coming. But I agree with you, the deep research, the reasoning capabilities, and we'll see that even on the mathematical capabilities that'll come to it. So it'll be super exciting where you have a database and you want to come up with a random new metric, just ask for it. Hey, this is the math I want you to do. And I have no idea how to write SQL, but I have access to a tool that can do it for me because it's so strong. The AI translates what my vague English is into an actual clear SQL query. Right, getting my accounts receivable, my top 10 customers who are 25 days past due as of the November 15th is quite a SQL query to write, but a very easy question to ask. And there's AI that will do exactly that. Take that question, translate it into SQL, run the SQL, give you the output. It's just amazing.
It's stunning. Do you have customers coming to you? Like, what's the volume of clients coming and saying, hey, help us apply AI? Or is it too early still? Are people...
it's a good question. We see a lot. I think what I would say is the interest in AI is vastly more than the people that are moving forward with it. I think I have most customers or clients of Connor Group want to learn about AI. We've done tons of educational sessions with people about it, really talking through the practical. What is it? How does it work? What are the realities of risks? What are some of the use cases? Sometimes they want to explore some of the products. I will say on the adoption flip side of that, as I think chatbots are now prevalent everywhere. Everybody has a chatbot, almost everybody, although maybe not everywhere, but it's 80, 85. I think our survey showed that like 85% of companies now have these things. But few are actually moving forward with the implementation. And I think that some of them are because, in all honesty, they have other bigger problems other burning platforms that they need to solve. Some of them are the education that we spoke about. Some of them are just, this is really cool, but I just don't need it enough. So the technical accounting research, for example, if you're a private company, unless you're doing a ton of revenue, super revenue complex, you just don't have that volume of complex accounting. So people say, we speak to some folks and they're like, wow, that's amazing. But I have 3 transactions a year. Why would I buy this? Right? So that's where I think part of it is finding those use cases. So I think there's more companies that could use it, that the education will expose them to this technology, and then they will jump on. And then as the technology also gets better, as the use cases get better, I think we'll see more adoption. I also think that as AI is being embedded in almost every system, every ERP, close management application, accounts payable, procurement system, all of those are embedding AI capabilities. That is another way that'll be much easier for people to get introduced to AI, because oftentimes those features are at least out of the gate, or the first versions are given for free. Yeah. So people are sometimes reluctant to add another piece of tech into their environment. But hey, if I have NetSuite and NetSuite gives me AI, why not, right? Flowcard, which is a close management application, just a couple of weeks ago rolled out some really cool agentic flows in their product.
I mean, kind of the sense I'm getting is it's still so early for AI. Like, I think it's easy because it's such this massive thing in the world right now that people assume we've reached it, we're plateaued. Yeah. Here's AI, here's where we're at, and what do we do now? We are like scratching the surface. It's not even integrated into existing tools yet, let alone people using it in general. It's hard to, when I start thinking of all the possible uses and how it could impact the world, it's hard to wrap my mind around it.
Well, our stats show that when we did the survey, so we take the chatbots aside, less than 20% had actually got something that's live with AI.
Wow, so 20%.
And that is not across the board. It's just 20%, meaning they did one thing. Everything. So it's a very low level of adoption, super, super low. So we're scratching the surface in terms of level of adoption, but we're also scratching the surface in terms of what the technologies can do, right? I remember asking some of these AI companies 18 months ago, guys, we need to do some AI for SOX controls testing. This is such a manual, painful thing that all these public companies have to do. And we've done SOX testing, I'm sure, Jacob, in your time.
Plenty of that, yep.
Nobody wants to do this, right? Nobody wants to pay for it. Nobody wants to do it. Everybody has to do it. It's like this low-hanging fruit. But now I'm aware of it, at least 3 companies that are very aggressively pursuing it. But it does require, the AI itself doesn't solve the problem because it does require some aspect of software layer to guide the process and some degree of really kind of training the AI to be able to, training is probably not exactly the correct technical term here for the purposes of this discussion, to teach it to do the right things, to understand what you mean, to provide the right outcomes. So there is, I think that's the piece of it. We know it can do it, but how do you deal with the variability? How do you deal with the actual workflow of doing controls testing? Because its usefulness, if I just throw it into ChatGPT and ask it to extract the data for me, and then I can put it into Excel, it's only not partially helpful. I would like it to do the whole cycle. I'd like to be able to put all my test procedures and I put everything. I can just load the documents, walk away and come back, and everything's written up with the referencing, and then I can just review. Right? And that's a workflow that you need to do.
Yeah.
So,
maybe this is a question for Spencer and you, Jason. Why is Excel so hard for AI still? I've tried to understand it. I've tried to figure it out, and I haven't been able to nail anything down.
CSV part, basically it comes down to like CSV parsing is a very manual process. I mean, like, you know, like a CSV is literally just, when you download it, it's literally a text file with comma separated strings. And so within those, with parsing those, you can run into all sorts of edge cases. It's sort of the same reason why not every browser parses HTML the exact same way, right? Like, it's just inherently parsing meaning out of strings is a somewhat hard thing to do.
I think that's probably the technology. The other thing that's problematic with Excel is it lacks context. Most Excel files lack context at all. You just have, created a table and I put my headings in there and I could have 3 date fields. What date is this, right? Yeah. So when I ask the AI, well, I may ask a question, what's outstanding, whatever it is. So you have date fields, you have all these columns of data.
Yeah.
And that, if you have a normal table structure, that's a lot easier. But actually, if you look at a lot of people's Excel files, I have a table over here, all on one tab. Table over here, a table over here, a picture over here, some text down here, and it's all, every tab, every month looks a little different. And it has no context. The context is sitting right in here because I know what I did with this. I know what this table is. I know what this references. Hard-coded numbers, formulas that don't make sense. So there is so much embedded context, lacking context in Excel files. I think that's the big. So I think tabular data, it will sort through and we'll figure that one out first. And AI will start getting better and better at inferring, hey, maybe from the file name or basic context, what these fields mean. But actual practical use case of Excel, you go to any company's account reconciliations in Excel, everyone looks different. Even if they've got the same general template on the first tab, you go tab 2, tab 3, tab 4, tab 5, it's all different. I mean, and that's a big problem with Excel. I think it's the most customizable piece of technology that accountants use, and man, oh man, they go to town on the customization.
They let their creative side run wild.
Very creative.
It's their one outlet. It's all they can do, you know. Yeah, because once that is unlocked, I feel like that'll really, with fields like accounting and finance, that'll change the game. I think adoption will increase dramatically.
Yep, because accountants love their Excel files. They just, no matter what we do, if there's one piece of technology that survives after the rollout of Excel, or AI, we may get rid of every SaaS application on the planet. Excel will be there because they will not want it to go.
People really underestimate how many business processes in the world are literally just an Excel sheet.
Yes. It is both amazing.
Like, some people would be horrified to learn that.
Oh yeah. I remember we had a very large client of ours, and they used to, they were a subscription business online to kind of an online service, consumer based. And they used to manage all their marketing program, all those codes that go out for you to get a free period was all in a spreadsheet. I mean, just, which was lovely because we had access to the spreadsheet. We were nice and we didn't steal them. It was like, we realized we could basically take 10 years of subscription for free here.
Oh my gosh.
Trying to manage them. There's a new, okay, right. Put 10,000 codes in the pile. Put it, I mean, it was just ridiculous. It's so funny.
Yeah,
I think that fixed it for us, but that's you're so right, Spencer.
Oh man, so I'd be curious, how How do you use AI in your personal life, personally?
Ooh, good question. My Spain trip last year was thank you to AI. We had a
Really?
great time. I always wanted to go to Spain. I had no idea all the. I mean, I've been to Barcelona and Madrid, but it was actually quite a great use case where it's like, hey, you know what? This
Yeah.
is what my wife and I like to do. These are the things we like to do indoors. We like to do outdoors. We like a bit of the history. Want to maybe do some wine tasting, whatever it was. This is the amount of time. This is the amount of days, and it's like give me an itinerary, suggest hotels. It even suggested the flights. Funny enough,
Oh, wow.
we've in previous times because we want to make sure we kind of get the right spots. We've actually used an agent to help out, and that person came back with a proposal which was both much more expensive. It had a connecting flight. So we ultimately like forget the agent. We'll just
Never
use
mind.
this info. We'll book it all ourselves.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was like 30-something% cheaper with direct flights, and it was amazing. So that was one of them. I use it for. I love cooking. I'm like, oh, I've got an idea. Okay, now give me a recipe to do X and Y. Right, I'd like to
Really?
do this or that. Yeah, I use it for cooking all the time. It's a really great way to come up with I'm not sure exactly what the right things to do is. Like today, I wanted to make a Cuban pulled pork. Okay, what goes into a Cuban pulled pork? Da, 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 da. I knew there was orange juice, but I wasn't sure. So it does all. It's amazing. I love to use it for that. Plus, just brainstorming ideas. The chat one is an interesting one as well. You can just kind of have a chat with it. I don't use it as much as I should, but yeah, I use it for lots of different stuff. My oldest son hates it. He's not exactly a big fan of AI, so he gives me a hard time. But I love it. I use it all the time. Even frankly, it's becoming. I still use Google a lot, but I find myself now using it interchangeably. I'll sometimes jump to the I guess the ChatGPT or Google kind of.
Yeah, I found that there are some queries that are answered much faster with ChatGPT. And then anytime I've gone to double check ChatGPT's answers, it's always been right. Yeah,
I tried it with I wanted to find some restaurants in New York, and I went and searched, hey, give me some cool, funky restaurants in New York, and it gives you these websites, and it's just impossible. So I go to ChatGPT, it's like, okay, this is kind of the restaurants I want to have a look at in New York.
Exactly.
Give me 10 names with the link, and that's it. And I've got 10 names, and I can get a brief description. I can go to the website. Whereas Google keeps sending me to Open Table and Yelp and whatever. It's like, I don't want to go 95 best. I don't want to see the 95.
Right.
Yeah, I don't need 100. I have one evening here.
Just need a handful.
Recommend something for me. So I use it all the time. I mean, it's funny. It's one of those things that it's starting now become so native in my day to day that, gosh, it would be terrible to go back in time now. It's kind of taking away your mobile phone from you. So,
yeah. True.
I feel broken anytime ChatGPT goes down. Like, what do I do with myself?
What did I do before? I'll be curious. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you bring up like these restaurants, and I've thought a lot about this. Where in the past, right, for these restaurants, particularly like a standalone restaurant, right, not a chain. In the past, search engine optimization was key. You had to rank on Google. You had to do these things, and now. Obviously, that's different. If you're going to New York and you say, "Hey, I want Italian food. I'm kind of interested in this dish." Yeah. It's not going to look at search engine optimization. It's going to go let me look at the Italian restaurants. Let me look at what they serve. But there's got to be something. I'll be curious if someone's able to hack somehow to still show up consistently by ChatGPT.
I think ChatGPT is going to monetize that way, actually. I think that we'll see, because you said with the ChatGPT search, but I actually think that's one of the ways that these AI companies will probably do some monetization on search, right?
That's true.
So they'll probably add an algorithm to the back where you can now monetize the search. So right now, it's a $1 million question how it chose the 10 that it gave me versus some of the other ones.
Right.
But you can see a very natural monetization path there, where Alexa is probably going to want to do something similar as well, where it's, hey, but I'm not aware of a user interface for that, but man, I guarantee it's coming.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the reason you give people free product is not because you're there, you're doing it for the best of humanity. It's because you're getting them onto the product to hook them and then monetize them.
Yeah. feels like that kind of taints the pure AI to me a little bit. You know? It just
Because
kind
you're
of
right, it's
stinks.
fiddling with the weights, right? I mean, that's what you'll do is you'll basically, you can't stop it, but you'll probably start fiddling with the weights, where it's like,
Yeah,
hey, how
that's
to
true.
prioritize and all that kind of stuff. So it'll be an interesting way to play around with it.
And then they'll probably have a paid subscription to get rid of that, so you can pay to just have the AI. Lots of
Yeah,
monetization going on here, you know?
yeah, will be right. And then it's an interesting question. How do you become aware of when you're actually being sold to versus when you're getting the pure AI? It's right, because a lot of these weights are not exposed. You have no idea how it works. So yes, it's a fun question to see where it plays out. But no doubt there will be monetization in many different angles. We may start getting banners when we go into ChatGPT.
I hope
My
not.
favorite.
Oh, hate that.
Yeah.
Before we maybe go more general, I'm curious, while we're in the finance accounting specific realm here, what would you say high level for accountants, finance personnel, if you could recommend a skill, something to work on or research, what are some suggestions you would give?
That's a great question. What are some of the things that, wow, that's a big one. One of the things I would love people to do is to actually, in some respects, it's explore a little bit of some of the art of the process. I'm not suggesting go and exploring all the technologies. It's almost like learning process improvement, funny enough, which I know is actually not technological in its orientation, but it is one which a lot of process improvement kind of skills and capabilities teach you how to break a process down into the steps that it performs, the systems that you're accessing, the data that you use, the outputs that you perform or produce, the constraints, the challenges. Because I think learning some of those skills and kind of going a little bit back to basics will be very, very powerful when we then come to these tools and use then start seeing if I can really get myself to take my process and break it into its component parts, see the pain points, see the source information or the outputs or whatever it is, it probably then helps you both facilitates for some of the basic use cases today with the chat GBT. Okay, here's places I can use it in my process or some of the tools that they're using. I think it'd be super beneficial as the agentic flow stuff becomes more and more prevalent. That idea of AI agents that can perform human functions and be sequenced together. It will be really important that you can articulate your process in that way, because most people don't know actually how to describe their process. Speaking to somebody, it was literally just a couple of days ago, they want to use AI for contract reviews. So like, okay, great. This is a perfect use case.
Yeah.
What do you look at? Like, well, so I kind of look at the contract and then I take the big ones and then I look for unusual terms. What does that mean? An unusual terms for a vendor contract is not the same as an unusual. An unusual? What is unusual to me is that mean non-standard? Is unusual mean a truly weird term?
Like an outlier? Yeah.
But what you will find in that description is very true for many processes that people perform. When you ask them to describe the process, they will oftentimes describe it at a very either high level or they'll take you through the happy path. And I think that's why it'll be so important for us if you want to really automate a process, you need to be able to describe it clearly and also understand the exceptions to the happy path. And in many cases, those exceptions are fairly complex. Actually, it's oftentimes that true 80-20. The pain point in the process, like, oh, it's such a painful process. It's not the happy path that's the painful. It's that 20% that is not the happy path, which is the 80% of the work. So people to really understand, hey, okay, well, what do you do when you get an invoice and you don't have a vendor for it, right? What do you do when there's a quote that we send to a customer and the product doesn't exist in our financial system, which are real life scenarios? So I do think going back to some of those basics, recognizing those things will be super, super helpful for people to, frankly, you'll probably recognize some good process improvements generally that'll help you use AI in its current form and really very helpful as you kind of explore going forward.
Yeah, I've wondered if that's part of why AI has caught on with the engineer crowd so much hotter than it has elsewhere. First, just because engineers are, prone to shiny toys like that already. And then second, the whole workflow of being an engineer is taking a process, breaking it down into its component parts, and then building those process, those individual functions of the process into code. And I found that's very similar to how you have to prompt an LLM a lot of the times, where you have to break it down for them. It's almost like there's this thinking experiment that one of my teachers did when I was a wee lad, when I was like 10 years old, where she stood up in front of the class and she had a jar of peanut butter, a jar of jelly, and then some bread, and she was like, all right, tell me how to make a peanut butter sandwich. And the kids are like, okay, so take out the bread, and she'd rip the bag open or something like that, right? Just do something ridiculous. And I found that's a very true principle for LLMs. LLMs are very, very good at intuiting what you want, but the problem is, they can only be 80 to 90% accurate at guessing what your true intent is, and at some point they're going to guess that wrong unless you are very clear in your communication to the LLM.
Yeah, I mean, we had somebody. This gap research tool, where somebody went in and typed ASC 842. That's the leasing accounting standard. ASC 842, that was 6 characters. What did you want the AI? So, I mean, I'm no doubt it got a response, but that's the kind of stuff or where you're right. I actually think engineers are engineered this way, where you really, especially when you're doing coding, I mean, you having to think if this, then that, and the connections between them, right? Because it's oftentimes it's a multi-tiered decision tree that's going on, and you really have to be asking about all those scenarios. So that's right. I actually think you're really spot on. Engineers are designed to take a problem, break it down into its entire workflow and all the nuances and scenarios and possible outcomes. I think you're really good at also asking, well, what happened? Oftentimes we see this in engineers where the account will describe it, and an engineer will start asking, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? What about this? Because the user hasn't even thought about those. But accountants, even though we do process documentation as you're part of an audit and all that kind of stuff, we're actually not very good at that. And I think it is a really good skill to get back to, because to truly automate, if you don't think about that's one of the funny things. You don't have to necessarily have full automation for every scenario, but you have to contemplate every scenario, because otherwise that scenario will happen and it'll go wrong. You can choose, hey, I'm not going to automate this. When the scenario goes, just kick it out and let a human get involved. That is an easy way, not automated, but contemplated. But if you don't do that, what will happen is it'll come in, it'll error out, right? Or we'll do something wrong. So really being able to think through frame those, recognize where you make decisions. It's just one of those, it's funny. People don't realize that when they make decisions in the process. It's like, well, I do this. And well, whoa. How did you decide to go down that path?
Yeah.
Why? Right? Oh, well, because of here. Well, that would be nice to know. Yeah. Right? It's all these little things that you have to get much more granular with when you're using it.
Yeah.
Now it'll be a lot easier. I mean, engineering really is, you're writing long strings of text, and you'll be able to get easier because you'll be able to do it in plain language, or you'll be able to talk through it. But it will require us to really get a little bit more specific and a little more granular.
Right. What's interesting is this mindset. I mean, this will help, even if you don't automate the process, like this will help you actually understand why you're doing things and what can be cut out. There's so much extraneous fat, we'll call it, in a process in most corporations where, I mean, if you think of the way it works, right? Someone's hired, you hire a senior accountant. The accountant comes in and you say, hey, here are your responsibilities. Do these things. And they say, okay, yes, sir. Yep. And they do those things. They don't know why. The other person doesn't really know why. They just know that they were told to do it. And so by adopting this mindset, it really will either one, it'll help you automate the process entirely, or two, it'll help you slim down the process for yourself.
Yes.
And that's what I've realized is there's no novel mindset that really has to be adopted for AI. Like it's just best practices in general that need to be applied. I haven't heard anyone give an answer to that where I'm like, I've never heard of this before. Yeah. Like, it really is just like, hey, this thing that works really well, you got to do it.
Yep. It is. It's going back to some of the basics. Now, the good news is there are now AI tools that can help you with documentation as well. So So the nice thing is you can use technology to help you get better at these type of things. You can write up a process and ask the AI to go through and identify where are the gaps in this process. What are the questions that I haven't answered? What are the I mean, there are good ways where you can leverage this technology, but getting that skill is going to be something that I guess, I do really believe we'll see a bit of a merging of skills. I think, as engineering and technology becomes easier, I think we will see those technology-oriented folks lean into more functional because they won't have to spend so much time, coding or configuring system or managing applications. They will manage themselves. They'll do a lot of themselves. So to be able to also instruct it well, you need to understand the functional side. Go to the functional side of the house, maybe it's the accountants, the actual volume of work will decline because a lot of this mundane, transactional, even some of the complex tasks. So accountants, to continue to add value, will be responsible for managing this technology that is performing these tasks. You almost become a manager of many agents rather than necessarily people. And it means accounting is leaning into the technology. So I think we're going to see a kind of an emerging of skill sets. I think that is the future of techno-functional people. People that understand how AI operates. How do you manage agents? How do you configure or instruct agents and other AI workflows? And not necessarily how do I process an invoice. I understand the concept of it, but I don't actually never need to do it, right? So I think it'll be an interesting evolution in skill sets.
Yeah, also some free advice to those who are not, engineer or AI prompting brained. AI LLMs are surprisingly good at optimizing their own prompts. So if you have a prompt that is not getting you what you want, enter the prompt and, tell ChatGPT or Claude or whoever, say, I want this out of the prompt. I'm getting this. Help me fix the prompt to get what I want. And you'll be shocked at how often that improves the results you're getting. I'm continually amazed at how, and I don't want to use the word self-aware because that implies a level of sentience that I don't think they quite have, but I'm continually amazed by how self-aware the models are. It's kind of spooky sometimes, but incredibly exciting. We have a little box that we can talk to and we can describe a process to it, and then that little box does that process for us. That's wild. It's mind-blowing.
I mean, on top of that, I'm continually amazed. One use case that has been adopted a lot, I think, is using ChatGPT to help draft messages. I just saw the study that one of the highest rates of adoption has been people using AI for dating apps to start this conversation. Oh, how do I respond in a way that's flirty, but not too much? It's actually way above almost anything else because people feel helpless and they're like, please help,
Please help me, digital god.
Yeah, seriously.
Not just for dating apps, but I do use it for messages all the time.
Yeah, I do use it for messages. And what I was going to say, kind of what you were saying, Spencer, is it's incredible if you just take one extra step. I'll ask it, write me a message. Here's the context. It'll write one. And then I just ask it again, review and edit this to make it, you can even just say review and edit this to make it better. You can leave it at that. And I am continually amazed how much better that second version gets.
I like to ask me questions. So, hey, here's my prompt or here's my message. Ask me questions about information that is missing in this message.
That's really good.
And then I answer it and I say, now, once you have the answers, now rewrite the message. So that way, because oftentimes, back to the point of us forgetting stuff, we don't give the full context. So there's a prompt. Okay, I wanted to rewrite the prompt. I wanted to rewrite the message. Well, what are the pieces of information that would help make the prompt better? Give that info, answer it, and then rewrite the prompt. You get a much more robust
That's really
prompt,
good.
Both written better and with better context.
Yeah.
I rant about this all the time on this podcast that a lot of the failures that people encounter with using LLMs are not necessarily actually a failure on the LLM, but rather a failure on the prompter to provide proper context. Going back to your example with the Excel earlier, right? We have so much hidden implicit context that we hold inside our head, essentially at a subconscious level, and we don't even realize that it's informing our decision making and our process making as we're in the middle of that, right? Because it's all happening at a level that we don't fully comprehend or are conscious of. And so that's why I love seeing people complaining about AI, and then they post a screenshot of their prompting and it's no dumb.
You got it wrong. Well, no, AI got it right. You got it prompted wrong.
Yes, it did exactly what you asked. Yeah,
exactly.
It's
the gap.
They're complaining that they didn't get they're complaining they didn't get an essay about orcas or something like that, and you just go, they show you the prompt and it's write me an essay about whales, and it's well, yeah, dude. That's a contrived example, but it's always something like that where it's you left out a very key point point of context here. And of course,
Yeah.
you know, it made an assumption and you can't control whether or not that assumption is correct. It's just like interacting with a human. If you don't provide the full context that you want them to have, now a human, I will say, is probably more likely to make the correct assumption of your intentions, just because a human will know you better, most likely speaking, you know.
Or ask questions.
But
very good at
yeah,
asking.
exactly. Yeah. Humans have that built in, whereas LLMs, and I'm going to rant. Sorry, this led me onto another tangent, which is that there's a lot of like these implicit thinking processes that we do that we learned over time. Like, for example, you know, you write a message and then inherently almost everybody will go back and reread it, right? To make sure that what they wrote makes sense, make sure that they didn't have any typos, etc. Make sure that autocorrect didn't mess up, you know, change weird to were, right? And we do that implicitly, but that's not necessarily a process or knowledge that is imparted to LLMs in their training.
Right.
And so that's why I think people get confused why they have to, you know, prompt the LLM to do that. And it's because it's like, you know, they don't think the exact same way you and I do. They don't exist in the same context and the same reality that you and I do. They lived in a world of pure data and pure geometry, essentially, right? It's very different, and you have to consider the differences in your frames of reference before you prompt the LLM.
That's a good point. What you touched on there is people keep getting surprised when you tell me, if you're not sure if the LLM got it right, just ask it. They're like, what do you mean? Because if, you know, it's a statistical model, it may make mistakes, but statistically, it's unlikely to make the mistake twice. And if it's reviewing it, so it's very good at either reviewing the content or rewriting the content or giving feedback on its own thing. It's so funny. I did that. What did I do? I forget. I wrote something and then I gave it back to it and I review it and it gives some phenomenal feedback and just keeps getting better and better. It's a really funny way to use it. Where my mind gets blown when I think about AI being able to create prompts and stuff is extend that beyond. And if AI can write prompts and write personas, if you embed that logic into the concept of an agentic flow, in other words, agents, you can now have agents creating agents to perform process. We're not there yet, but I think we will get to a point where you will be able to we will have an agent that is really good at architecting the process and creating agents.
Yeah.
And that agent, all it will do is will recognize your intent and then from there architect a custom process for you. Because it knows how to write. Once it understands the context, it may not necessarily know the sequence, but it will create the agents to read, to review, to analyze, to examine, to record, to transact, to do whatever. I think that's where kind of some of the world is going to go. So it's just amazing when you think about what it can do.
It's absolutely stunning. We had someone on the show, Zebediah was his name, and he joked at the beginning of the episode that he's like, you know, we're not that far away where someone could basically come in and create a corporation, like come in and clone Google and say, hey, I have an agent for every single one of your employees that can do what they do, and it's humming along by itself. People don't understand how close we are to being able to do something. He's like, that's extreme, but I mean, it's not crazy. And that's where I think, Jason, I can't remember if this was before we started recording or during, where you mentioned this incredible shift of the leverage of human capital in the sense of Google now, right, largest market cap company with whatever it is, 10,000 employees. And we had on Rahul, the CEO of Julius AI, and they scaled to 500,000 users with 5 employees, right, Spencer?
Crazy.
Yeah, it was like 5 to 10. It was real low.
It was like this perfect example of this. It's just the leverage you can have.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, but it requires a mindset. I mean, you need to walk into your organization with this mindset. The first question we ask is, how do we use AI? And a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people, even AI companies, don't do that. They're like, okay, we're going to focus so much on the product, and then they allow the kind of the back office to scale ineffectively. You really should challenge yourself forward.
Yeah,
I want to touch on something there. You said, like, how can I use AI? And I think that that's an important mindset to have, because to your point, I think that there are a lot of people that come in with the mindset of like, how can AI help me? Which sounds like it's not different but it really is. It's a very different mindset of like, how can this tool perform an action for me rather than how can I use this tool to perform an action? Just subtly different mindsets that I think really affect how people choose to use and how the types of uses that people can see with these tools. I had a great anecdote or example to continue that, but it left my mind.
Well, maybe I know we're kind of starting to wind down here, Jason, but I'm curious now, looking forward for you, is there an area of industry, of business, of anything whatsoever that you're excited to see AI be applied to?
So I am the analytics and the data side of the house. I think is real, and I'm not just actually talking about the analytics part of it, but I really imagine a world where not only do you have the AI helping with the analytics, but actually proactively driving the actions from those. I see something in the data, I recognize a trend in the data, it then determines who needs to be informed, but actually better than that, it determines the actions that need to be taken. It then executes those actions. It's a way for organizations to react so much more quickly. We are very bad at reacting to signals in data because we're very bad at even seeing the signals in the data in a timely basis. So many signals, humans, we struggle to understand correlations in data beyond 2 or 3 or 4 things that drive data. Our brain struggles with that. I guess even machine learning models can do that. AI models can do that. They can see patterns that we can't see. They can see patterns over time that we can't see. Yeah. They can forecast so much better than we can. To me, that is going to be a way where now we can not only act more quickly, but we'll be able to forecast more accurately, project more accurately, play a lot of what-if scenarios based on this. I think that is an area, because that is about growing businesses, about driving change in organization. The accounting and stuff I think is super interesting, and I think we'll do that. But I think that piece where we're looking at really understanding what's going on in a so much more granular level, and then being able to act much more quickly and much more precisely, right? It's less of that human intuition, which is sometimes right and oftentimes entirely misplaced. So,
to your point, that's happening in the engineering world already, and I'm sure that the other worlds aren't far behind. Where there are a lot of companies now and friends who have setups where whenever somebody files a bug report on their product or whatever, there's an AI bot that automatically reviews the bug report, reviews the code base, and prepares a fix for the bug. And they're finding I'm probably making up the number, but I believe that one of my friends was saying, probably 80% of the bugs that they get reports on are solved purely by their AI bot, and all he does is he looks at the code and he says, "Yeah, it looks good," and commits the code to the product. And so it'll be really interesting to see, what is the equivalent of that tool for accountants? What is the equivalent of that tool for copywriters? What is the equivalent of that tool for marketers, etc.?
I have to leave soon, unfortunately.
No worries. This is perfect timing. Thank you so much for joining us.
Jason, this was great. Thanks for coming on. If people want to follow you, is LinkedIn the best place?
LinkedIn is probably the best place to go. I mean, I share a lot of thoughts and insights. I have lots of ideas, whether they're right or wrong. Anybody can come back to me in 5 years and we'll find out.
I'm sure they'll let you know.
I'm sure they will, actually.
Awesome. Okay, well, we'll drop a link.
I'm going to set up an AI bot that will, check back on you in 5 years.
There you go.
All your LinkedIn posts. This one's going to Jason. This one's not.
Much more going to pass your way. But hey,
all right. Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming on, Jason.
Absolutely. Cheers.